Welcome to Sitcom Showdown, a podcast that reviews classic sitcom episodes and inducts them into our very own Hall of Fame. As usual, one of us has chosen a sitcom episode and the other guy has no idea what it's going to be. Will they already know it? Will they love it? Can they be convinced that it's worthy? Let's find out on the Sitcom Showdown. Hello and welcome to Sitcom Showdown episode 77. It's Jeffers here and Steve, you're just there.
Yep, g'day listeners.
Setting aside the fact we're a little bit late, we're still on the we're still on the actor spotlight phase. So it's your turn, Steve.
Yes, it's part 2.
And you've selected somebody?
I have. Now I want to say up front that I did choose this person before we recorded the last episode.
Oh really? Okay.
And the reason I'm saying that will become apparent
in a few seconds. Oh, okay.
So I've chosen the Black Widow, Jeff. Not ScarJo.
No way.
But Stephanie Cole.
What are the odds?
Yeah.
Holy moly, okay.
So just in case the listeners haven't got around to listening to the previous episode, we actually featured David Haig and covered an episode of Keeping Mum, which Stephanie is
one of the
Yes, one of the stars of. So
yeah.
Yes, that was a bit of a bizarre coincidence.
Okay, so then now having seen Keeping Mum, that wasn't the one you were going to watch, was it? Okay, right.
Not. So it has worked out pretty well.
Okay, good.
Yes. So Stephanie was born Patricia Stephanie Cole, 5th of October 1941. She's 79 years old.
Okay.
Currently. She was born in Solihull, Warwickshire. She trained at the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School.
Ooh.
And then she made her stage debut at the ripe old age of 17.
As the back end of a pantomime horse, or as a starring role?
So she started in a comedy.
Yeah.
So obviously started out the way she...
Wow.
Well, she's done dramatic roles as well, as we'll talk about. But yeah, she's obviously started in comedy and continued on through much of her career. So she was playing in this play an eccentric elderly medium, Madame Arcati.
Right.
And it was an old coward play called Blithe Spirit. And she played opposite Leonard Roster.
No way.
From Rising Damp.
Ah, there you go.
How's that? So she started out playing an elderly character as well.
As a sitcom stalwart, opposite another sitcom stalwart.
Yeah, Leonard Roster, obviously, Rigsby.
Wow.
From Rising Damp. Now, after about 12 or 13 years of solid acting work, she gave up acting for a period of time. And this is a quote on what happened. She said, "I had spent 12 years in theatres and radios around the country and felt I wasn't getting anywhere. I just thought I was probably no good at it and tried other jobs such as bookbinding. Then one day I was invited to teach at the Old Vic School, and after a year began getting offers for roles in more plays and small parts on the telly. That began what I call the second half of my career. And the first notable thing that happened in this second half of her career was a role on Tenko. It was one of the dramatic roles that I was talking about.
With Leela from Doctor Who?
Yes.
Okay.
Louise Jamieson. Apparently she had to lose quite a bit of weight for that role because they obviously, playing prisoners of war in a Japanese prisoner of war camp, needed to look quite, emaciated or slim or something like that.
So she went full Christian Bale and...
maybe Christian not quite that hardcore.
Okay.
So that was Tenko 81 to 85. And apparently Ronnie Barker spotted her in Tenko and brought her on board to play Mrs. Delphine Featherstone in Open All Hours. So she was doing Tenko 81 to 85 and then Open All Hours 82 to 85.
Right.
In parallel.
That's not bad.
That's the Black Widow role. And we covered Open All Hours in Sitcom Showdown 31.
Yep, and then we covered Still Open All Hours.
And that was Sitcom Showdown episode 72. Yes, then she played, in 1989, she was in another sitcom with David Jason. She wasn't starring in that one, but I just found it interesting that, she's done now 3, well, depends if you count Still Open All Hours as a separate sitcom or
which
a different,
we don't.
Or the same one.
Yeah.
Jeff doesn't, but so that's 2 sitcoms she's been in David Jason with.
Oh.
So that was a bit of a do.
And it's I do remember bringing up in one of the times we covered Open All Hours that Stephanie Cole's only, 2 years older or perhaps younger than David Jason or something like that. It's just amazing that she played a character so much older than he was.
Yep, we should be going through and noting in each one of these roles how much younger she was than the character she was playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So David Jason was playing a 50-year-old character in A Bit of a Do in 89, and only a few years before he'd been playing Granville in Open All Hours.
Yeah,
he was supposed to be
late
in his
20s or something.
He was supposed to be in his 20s or something like
Yeah.
that. So that's hilarious. It's all over the shop. Then the next one to note is Waiting for God, which is the one we're going to be talking about in more detail later on.
Right.
And that was 1990 to 1994. She played Diana Trent in that. And then Keeping Mum, which we talked about earlier, 97 to 98 with David Haig.
Yeah.
Which, yes, I quite enjoyed that last time. It was quite good. And then Life as We Know It in 2001, she played Lizzie Cameron, and that was opposite Richard Wilson of One Foot in the Grave fame.
Oh, yes. And Only When I Laugh fame. Yeah.
Oh, it's just...
all the connections.
It's an amazing list of work.
Yeah.
She played character Joan Norton in Doc Martin, so that was presumably a bit more of a dramatic role again, in 2004 to 2009. Have you heard of something called Cabin Pressure?
Yes, I have. That will be a radio comedy done by John Finnemore.
Exactly, Jeff. You're all over it.
Yeah.
Yes, there were 4 series of that from 2008, including specials and bits and pieces.
Oh.
And that, of course, had Benedict Cumberbatch in it as well.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah.
Far out. I've been gobsmacked several times this episode already.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
She was in Coronation Street for a few years.
Oh, wow.
2011 and 2013.
Yes.
I don't know if that's a backward step or what, but
It's regular work.
it's regular work.
You ain't going to turn it down.
How about this one? Man Down.
Oh,
2014 to 2017 with Greg Davies.
Yeah.
Now, I checked.
He played an auntie or something.
Yes, this is after Rick Mayall passed away, so we never got to see them on the screen together. In Man Down.
Oh.
That was a bit of a shame.
It is a bit of a shame. Man Down's one of those shows that I feel grubby after watching it.
Oh, why?
Yeah. I don't know. It just doesn't
one of
seem
those.
right somehow. You don't come out of it feeling good.
Oh, okay.
Talk about the comedy of embarrassment. Crikey blimey. Anyway, let's not get into that.
Okay.
Whoa.
We'll leave that alone.
But I'd totally forgotten she was in Man Down. So yeah, keep it coming. What else?
We're
has she
still
been?
rolling. We've got Still Open All Hours, which of course would still be filming if COVID hadn't come around.
I reckon.
Then Scarborough in 2019, she played Marion Norris, and that's a Jason Manford show.
Yes.
Have you heard it? You know about Jason Manford?
Totes, yeah. I used to listen to Jason Manford's podcast on Absolute Radio for years.
Right.
And he's a biggie in the comedy game and all that sort of gear. Yeah. The thing about Jason Manford is he's always got great anecdotes, right? He's very good at what he does on the radio, but once you've tuned in for 4 or 5 years, it's just the same anecdotes coming up again and again.
The wells run dry.
And you go, oh no, I've heard this one 3 times before. I mean, they're pretty good, but anyway, never mind. So he's in that with Stephanie Cole, is he? Well.
Yep. And just to finish up, she won the Best TV Actress at the 1992 British Comedy Awards for this role that we're going to see her in Waiting for God, and won Best Comedy Performance at the 2012 British Soap Awards for her role in Coronation Street. And she was made an OBE in 2005.
That wall stays until Tom apologises for asking me to shack up with him in order to save money. Did you make that clear to him?
Well, I tried, but he just said you were being more bloody-minded than usual. And then Daisy Williams came along and dragged him off.
What's that little Dresden Hitler up to?
Well, she's got Harvey round her little finger.
And Tom too, by the sound of it.
Oh, I don't think anyone could come between you and Tom.
What?
No, you needn't be jealous of her, Diana.
Jealous? Me? I would never tolerate an emotion based on the wayward and fickle affections of a mere man.
I don't believe you, Diana. Naughty, naughty, fibby, fibby. Bogeyman will get your tongue.
I happen to be a self-contained unit. I do not need a man about the place. Particularly not a bumbling old golf bag like Tom.
When Tom Ballard moves to the Bayview retirement home, he meets Diana Trent, a feisty old woman who complains about everything and wants nothing more than to just die. Much to the dislike of Harvey Baines, the head of the home, the two form a friendship and eventually a romance, helping each other out of tight situations. Tom's son, Jeffrey, and daughter-in-law, Marion, whom Tom doesn't particularly like, are constantly stopping in, and Jane, a worker at the home, is Diana's worst nightmare, being constantly cheerful. So Stephanie plays Diana, the feisty old woman. Tom is played by Graham Crowden, who was offered the role of the Fourth Doctor in Doctor Who, back in the mid-70s, Jeff. Nice.
And his voice is very distinctive.
I was going to say that.
Graham Crowden's voice, and so it was bugging me for a long time, is where do I know this bloke from? Anyway, yeah.
And you also recognised him from Chance in a Million.
Well, no, I hadn't until we looked up his IMDb.
He's also quite tall, so the voice and quite physically imposing.
So him and Tom Baker are quite similar now that I think about it. You know, they're tall, they've got those tremendous voices, and they're both a bit eccentric.
Yeah, he also reminds me of, is it Christopher Lloyd? Who plays, is it Doc from
Doc.
Back to the Future?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very similar. Yeah, so Tom is a bit of a zany character, so he fits Graham Crowden quite well. He's also thick-skinned enough to persevere and survive the slings and arrows of his neighbour, Diana. All right, so we're looking at an episode from Series 2. This is Episode 3, Daisy Takes Charge. Shall we go through it?
Yeah.
I thought it was a bit of a cracker. This is the highest rated episode of Season 2, or Series 2, on IMDb. That's why I picked it.
Did that? Yeah, okay, good. That guided your choice.
I happen to have a DVD of Season 2, so I thought, that'll do me.
Yep.
So we open with Diana padlocking shut an opening in the screen wall that's been erected between her place and Tom's place. So I was asking you before what this enclosure is. So they've got units that are side by side in the retirement home on the ground floor. And then as you walk out of their units into the garden, they've got a glass house or a conservatory or something like that running along the back of it. And it's open, well, normally it's open between
all the units,
and they sit out there together and have a chin wag and whatnot. But anyway, at the moment, it's got this screen up. Now, she put this up in the previous episode in response to Tom's suggestion that they shack up together to save money. Right, yes. She took umbrage, Jeff. She took umbrage.
Yes.
Anyway, in this scene, she is being informed by Jane that the management of the retirement home is not too chuffed that she's put this up without their approval. I think she might mention a committee that she should have gone through or something like that.
Yeah, right. So
and
it's like the homeowners association or something. Yes. Yep. Now, should we mention for the listener that Jane is someone who works at the retirement home? Or have you already mentioned that? I'm not sure.
No, I haven't.
Okay,
well, cool. I might have done in the
intro.
Yeah. Jane is a worker at the home.
Oh, cool.
Now, she is one of the few that's on speaking terms with Diana, although Diana doesn't think much of her.
No.
She's a bit spineless, I guess, Jane. So she's an easy target. Yeah, so she's not having a bar of this request to tear the wall down. It's going to stay up until Tom sees the error of his ways. Fair enough. But there is another order of business. Jane also asks if Diana will again sort out the stall holders for the school fete that's coming up.
Okay.
Now, the arrangement must be that the residents of the home help out at the school fete or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Manning a tent or whatever the thing is, bobbing for apples or...
Yep.
Let your imagination run wild with 70s and 80s fate kind of games. In the next scene, they're rearranging the seating in the dining room. So previously there were individual tables set up, more like a restaurant or something like that. But at the insistence of Daisy, the new resident, they're putting all the tables in a row, joining them all together.
Yep.
Yes. And Colonel Tom has been drafted as Daisy's second in charge. She seems very obsessed with military operations and makes lots of references to them.
She does.
If they'd made it Major Tom, we could have had some fun with that.
I think they're trying to avoid doing that.
No? Okay, that would have been just too...
They didn't want to pick that low-hanging fruit. Yeah, okay. Exactly.
All right. So Colonel Tom's been drafted. I should mention that Daisy is she's a bit fancy. She has some airs about her.
Mm-hmm.
Does she think she's a bit posh, or she is actually a bit posh?
Yes, probably both. Yes.
All right, fair enough.
She's very smartly buttoned up.
Yes, she is. Tom, having returned to his unit, tries having a conversation with Diana through the wall, but really makes no real attempt to mend the fences.
No.
He doesn't give a straight-out apology or anything like that.
No. Well, perhaps he doesn't feel he's in the wrong.
She says, "Oh, did you want to make an apology?" He goes, "I don't know, did I?"
Yes.
So it goes on like that a bit. Anyway, the row continues. That's the main point. He says, so after the row continues and it blows up a bit, he says, "I used to be an accountant, you know. Economy comes naturally to me, just like being a vicious old prune comes to you."
Yeah.
His reference to economy being the fact that, they'd save so much money if they moved in together, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of that scene, you can see, because he cracks a joke, one of his movie references, and you can see her on her side of the screen laugh at his joke, and she starts walking over to the screen to open the hatch, the viewing hatch, and make amends. In prison, yeah. But before she can get to the hatch, he says something stupid and annoys her. She changes her mind. So that's a bit sad.
So we saw her smile for, probably the only time this episode.
Possibly.
And potentially the only time this whole series.
Yep.
Who knows?
I should say this screen is a brilliant idea, because it's a real plot device.
Oh, yeah.
Like 2 or 3 times we get to see people overhearing conversations and all this sort of business.
Yep.
So that's brilliant. Back in the common area, or the common room, Tom follows instructions and nominates Daisy as the director of activities, which is accepted by all, apart from Diana, before they start tea. It's not accepted by her because she's arriving late. So Daisy's taking over control of the whole show, basically, and making people do all these things that they're not necessarily too enthusiastic about.
No, that's right. But people like to go along to get along. So they just think, I'll just go along. I won't make a fuss. I don't want to make a bad impression with the new resident.
Yep.
And next thing you know, they're being bullied into all sorts of crap.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh.
When Diana does come in, she discovers the new seating arrangements, which have united all the tables, including hers. She tries unsuccessfully to get it overturned, and
not the table, the decision.
Yeah. She does that she talks to Tom, basically. She says, Tom, are you happy with this, or something like that? And he says, well, we're not talking to each other.
Yeah, you can't have it both ways.
Yes.
Diana is speaking to this other lady that works at the home, saying, put my table back where it was immediately.
Yep.
And so, but the new lady, Daisy, has to step in and say, no, this is how we're doing it now. The table stays where it is.
Yep.
And all the people are sort of looking around going, this is going to kick off.
World War III. It's happening, people.
They just want their dinner for goodness sake. You've got Daisy trying to sneak in all these rules before dinner while people aren't concentrating. Yep. And Diana's about to... Anyway, it doesn't kick off, does it, Steve?
It doesn't.
No.
Yes, because before it can, Tom says that he's not talking to Diana, so as a consequence of those two not being on the same page, Daisy is just running right and getting her own way, left, right and centre.
She's dividing and conquering.
Yes.
Well, can I make another quick observation?
Exactly. Yes, go ahead.
Well, have I got this wrong, but I'm not sure if this was a deliberate thing, but all these other tables are square, but Diana's table, her own little table, is round.
Nice observation.
Is this to easily delineate it for the viewer so they can easily see this table is Diana's table because it's the only round one? I'm not sure.
It does help. It's a nice visual cue.
Cool.
When you see it laid out like that.
Oh, okay. So Diana hasn't, in Series 1, if someone puts a square table in front of me, I'm going to punch their lights out.
I don't know about.
Okay, fair enough.
But if she did, I'd give her a round table.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Post-haste.
Yeah.
Yes, before we get back into what's going on, Diana makes this reference to everyone singing in response to Daisy trotting out and all these things.
All the new rules.
She makes a reference to everyone singing the Horst Wessel song. How do you know what the Horst Wessel song was?
No.
It was the official anthem of the Nazi Party.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, so that's actually a total burn. She's totally burned this.
That was a deep cut. And she calls the residents headless chickens and Daisy a goose-stepping turkey. So none of the other residents or staff are willing to stick their neck out.
No.
And we see these outdoor activities that Daisy has organised, and she's got Tom to run around and find some medicine balls, and it's just farcical because if you can imagine a bunch of infirm elderly folk trying to
roll medicine balls through their legs,
or just even bending over to pick it up or something's a bit of a chore.
Darn right.
That doesn't
Daisy must just think that she is putting them through boot camp or something like this. It's completely bonkers.
So Basil and Diana are off to one side, sitting on a park bench, observing this, and Basil makes some crack about, Harvey likes this because maybe a few of the residents will cark it while they're playing with playing the tunnel ball. But I like Basil. He's quite a good character. He's one of the few other residents with a bit of pluck.
Well, he doesn't immediately strike you as any sort of consequential... He didn't strike me as any sort of consequential character. But then when you look back on it, now that you mention that, every time Daisy says, all right, and so we all agreed that blah, 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 and then he'll go to stand up to object, and then she goes, not now, Basil, and he sits down.
Yeah.
Which I took to him being a bit spineless. But no, he's the only one that actually stood up. And he does have a few cool quips in these conversations he has with people. And at the very end, when he's talking about being the Casanova of the thing, it just cracked me up.
Yep.
If I wasn't so knackered from being the Casanova.
Casanova. Yes. I've got that one.
What a guy.
Yeah, that's crazy, that one.
But he's not an over-the-top character as you might get with other sitcoms. But I imagine he comes out with some decent lines. Sorry, you were
I was just going to say, he probably moves into... Like, normally, Diana would be making these cutting quips or remarks to Tom.
Yeah.
But, of course, they're not on speaking terms at the moment, so Basil probably fills that kind of a role.
Oh, okay.
A bit in this episode. Oh, where do we get to, Jeff?
Well, we got to the bit where we've had
the tunnel ball.
Dinner table, after the tunnel ball.
Dinner table, tunnel ball.
Basil.
At the end of this, Tom gets a kiss from Daisy, much to Diana's chagrin, as she's, as we've already said, passing by. After their exertions, Daisy and Tom have a spot of tea back at his place, and she's saying how there's going to be a lot of changes required around here if she's going to stay.
Ooh.
As if she hasn't already made enough changes.
Yeah.
And she starts outlining her changes to the changes to the staff that she's got in mind, which are overheard by Jane, who happens to be cleaning up or something like that in Diana's place on the other side of the screen.
Yep. So she'll be gone.
Dun, dun. She'll be gone. Harvey will be gone. And, of course, Harvey finds out from Jane that he's looming in Daisy's crosshairs.
Yeah.
So they're going to try and get him fired for incompetence, I think.
I don't like Harvey very much, Steve.
You don't like
He's
Harvey?
not very likeable.
No? Why?
No, because he's mean to Jane. And he's constantly on about her being clumsy and self-centered when he's only just thinking about him.
Yeah, and Jane's pining for him, right?
Oh.
He's got no idea that
is this
she
a
even
subplot
exists.
happening?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because when Diana comes in, and yes, I'm going to mention Diana coming in a minute, she says something like, oh, you smell of fear and cheap cologne. Yeah. And Jane goes, it wasn't cheap.
So she'd bought it for him?
She'd bought it for him.
Ah. Well, there you go.
You know, there's a couple of telling little remarks like that.
Oh.
So that's all a bit of a sad story. Yes, he's not very nice.
No.
That's probably why Diana hates him so much.
I guess so.
Yeah. All right. By the way, there's some weird politics in this whole setup with the retirement village because there's some kind of a board.
Yep.
Which Harvey apparently answers to.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom's son and daughter-in-law
are on the board.
Sit on the board.
Yeah.
So there's it's weird kind of a dynamic going on. Anyway.
I guess it makes sense though.
Does it? Is that the way these things normally run?
If you just have one person or a couple of managers unaccountable to anyone, if they decide to do some dodgy practices, then you get a bit of a nursing home nightmare. But then if you have people, oversight from a board, then that introduces a lot more, a lot more red tape and bureaucracy, but it also means that people can't just do whatever they want and say, we're going to halve the food rations, says Harvey. He'd have to run that by the board. Oh, well, let's not go down that rabbit hole too much.
Anyway, Harvey's in a bit of a conundrum because in order to get Daisy out, he needs to get Diana on board, but she's almost worse than Daisy, so he's kind of tossing up between these two warrior women who are crashing around the place, and he says one of them will have to go.
Yeah, so, sorry, have we pointed out, and we probably have, and forgive me if we have, that Daisy's done up this, what the board might think is an absolutely superb report on how to completely change the way this entire joint is run, even though she's just the new resident, and she's done, presumably, a big cost analysis and said, we've got to get rid of Harvey, so it's not just her opinion, she's actually laid it out in this superbly written report.
Well, I think that might become explicit in the next scene.
Oh, cool, sorry, yes.
Tom having a cuppa with his son Jeffrey and daughter-in-law Marion, who he hates. So they popped around to see him, and yes, they've got their hands, they're members of the board, as I just said, they've got their hands on this interim report which Daisy has put together,
right,
outlining all the changes, and they're lending their support. I said, as they are similarly Ponzi gets.
Yeah.
But yes, I can't understand why they're interested at all in cutting corners on the care for the elderly folk, which include their own dad. So Marion puts Tom's nose out of joint, and he hurries them on. Mm-hmm. He says something like, I can feel one of my wanting to strangle Marion moods coming on.
That was pretty good.
That's the subtle approach.
Yeah. And then she said for him to open a window because it's a bit whiffy, implying that he whiffs.
Yeah.
Well, he's a superbly dressed gentleman.
Was that seriously the best comeback she could think of?
I don't know.
That was pathetic.
Yes.
Tom doesn't whiff.
No. He can't whiff, surely.
Surely not. Diana was listening to all this, again, behind the screen. She goes to find Daisy, who has been redoing the menu for the following week. Oh. She's been taking all the non-English items off the menu.
Yeah. She doesn't need or want all that fancy French stuff on the menu.
Yeah, and the nice staff lady, whose name we can't remember, says, but we're going to have bread and butter pudding every second day.
And bangers and mash. Yeah.
Yes.
But
so,
what's coming up, and you're about to tell us, this whole scene which you're about to tell us about is just superb dialogue from whoever the writer is of this thing.
The writer was Michael Aitkins.
Okay.
He wrote all the... Isn't it brilliant how some writers wrote every single episode of the sitcom? Yeah. And some still do it. Obviously Ben Elton and Upstart Crow, for example.
It certainly gives you continuity, if nothing else.
Yep. All right, now I'm struggling to find where I was.
Well, I'd interrupted you when you were about to talk about how Diana had just come in and then was going to lay down the law on the new lady, Daisy Williams, and her rewriting of the menus. And then she was talking about the French.
Well, you think she's going to lay down the law, but she's actually there to ask Daisy what her intentions are towards Tom. Mm-hmm. Daisy doesn't seem to really have even considered this. Like, to me, Tom's not even really on her radar, apart from
someone to manipulate.
Just a means to an end.
I think you're right.
Yep, someone to manipulate and do all the running around for her.
Yeah.
Whereas Diana's obviously got something else in mind. Back in the office, Harvey's got a copy now of the interim report. And as we've already said, he's got to get Diana on his side. And it's perfect timing because she's come around to see him. And we discover that his office is upstairs. So she comes in puffing and panting to his office, which she says, I know you've put this on the first floor so that half of us can't even get up and come complain to you.
Yeah. Which I reckon's about dead right.
Yes.
And how she getting down would be even worse.
Oh.
With her stick.
Be a nightmare. I bet they don't even have a railing or something.
No, probably not.
No, they probably greased the walls or something.
Throw the marbles on the stairs.
Exactly.
All that sort of stuff.
But Diana's not going to help him. She will actually get out of Daisy's way.
Oh.
So what's going on here? She's decided if Daisy's going to make Tom happy, then she'll... And if that's what Tom wants, she'll just step back and let him... Go ahead.
So is she capitulating or is she playing 4D chess or what's going on?
I don't know.
Or nor do I. Oh well. Well, but the point being that they want to get her on board to help oust Daisy.
She's saying no. This is very odd.
Yeah.
Because you'd think that her nose would be put right out of joint by this whole situation and she'd be wanting to fight back, but she's not doing it for her own reasons. In the dining room, Basil is remonstrating with Tom about being led around by the nose by Daisy. He says you're just being a right wally or something like that. Mm-hmm. He needs his ears boxed, and as you've already said, he would do it himself if he wasn't too knackered from being the local Casanova.
Yeah.
Which is just hilarious.
It is great. But the visuals of it is like Basil's a shorty, and obviously, as you've said, Tom's a tallie.
Yep.
He wouldn't even be able to reach Tom's ears.
No, you'd have to stand on
He'd
two
have to
boxes
use his
to get
stick or something, yeah. Crikey.
But I think something about Basil's speech may strike home with Tom. He heads around to Diana's unit. Coming through... Is that nowhere?
I don't know. I just thought I'd throw it in. No.
I've just read what I've written next, and you're going to ooh again.
Yeah, totally.
So I've written, Tom heads around to Diana's unit, coming through her place.
Yeah.
And I've put that in there because normally, of course, he would talk to her from his side of the...
Yeah, that's right. He
from
would
his
have
unit.
come out of his
yes.
back door, and then she would have come out of hers, and then they'd be chatting in the shared area.
In their
but no, he's gone, obviously, through her front door.
Yep.
Walked through her unit, and then goes boing.
Caught her unawares.
Yeah, which is normally he'd be risking death by doing such a thing, I imagine.
And he's come around to ask her to come for lunch.
Yep.
In the dining room. She's gearing up to have it at home, I think, because of all the table changes and whatnot.
Yep.
But he says, no, come around. It would mean a lot to me if you did. And he says, about it being important to his future.
Okay.
And she's like, whoa, what do you mean it's going to make you look bad in front of Daisy if I don't come around because you've been ordered to go and get me or something like that?
Ah, yes.
And he's like, well, maybe. So he's not quite. Anyway, she grudgingly agrees to go along. And as they arrive, Daisy's announcing that she's going to be instituting a daily roster. And she's going to be sharing a positive thought with them every morning.
Yeah.
And let's face it, they're going to need some positive thoughts.
Oh, wow.
In light of all the changes she's making.
Yeah, she's going to have them polishing their shoes every morning or something like that. And once again, correct me if I'm wrong, Basil goes to stand up to say something, and we're all agreed, and then Basil stands up, she goes, not now, Basil.
Yeah, sit down.
It's a bit Faulty Towers.
Yes. Now, Diana, having arrived, goes to sit down at her
designated
her
spot.
Table in the new joined arrangement.
Yeah.
But as she goes to sit down, Tom says, hold it! And he walks over and whips the tablecloth off the table and shifts her round table back to its rightful place. And then gives Daisy a bit of a dressing down.
Yeah.
Saying that these people have done their bit and now they deserve their freedom to do whatever they like and their happiness, and everyone gives him a round of applause.
It's a great speech.
It is a fantastic speech, and he thought it up all himself.
Yeah, on the spot.
On the fly. So they, having had lunch, presumably, head back home for a cup of tea. So Tom's on his side, she's on her side. The screen is down, so that's a good sign. It's quite cute. I don't know if you noticed, but he's got the tea set with the teapot and everything like that on his
table.
At his table, and he's taken the cup of tea. He's made her a tea
and taken
it over to her, and she's drinking it at her table.
Oh, okay. Rather than sitting anywhere near Tom.
No, I think they're just comfortable like that.
Okay, right, fair enough.
Because they've made up at this point.
Yeah.
So Daisy's gone, and Diana actually says, I'm going to miss her. I was looking forward to a good punch-up. And Tom says, well, why didn't you come out fighting? We were all expecting you to. She says, well, maybe I was just getting a bit old. Maybe I'm just getting a bit old. But really, it was more about letting Tom decide what he wanted.
Giving him enough rope to either hang himself or tether himself.
Yeah, so that was quite nice. And Tom says, what if instead of asking you unceremoniously to shack up with me, I'd said it romantically. Something like, look, Diana, we're a couple of old battered buses. Why don't we just ring the last bell and trundle off to the old scrapyard together? That's his idea of a romantic gesture, a romantic proposal.
But she seems responsive.
Yeah, well, she says she wouldn't have taken offence at being asked a clean, simple question. Maybe not as flowery as the one that I just read out, but he goes, "Oh, okay." He then larps as Fred Astaire, asking her, Ginger Rogers, to have a dance with him. And they head outside for a dance, and you can hear the music cheek to cheek.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah, the camera pulls out.
Yep.
You can see them there.
And there was a highly noticeable cut as they move from what must be an indoor set.
The studio to what must be on location.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a shocker.
And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah.
It's a very nice last scene.
All's well that ends well.
Right. Have you got any thoughts before I don't have all the usual guff that I do at the end of an episode. I've just got a few thoughts and then that's it.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, we'll wrap this one up in record time because I haven't got many notes either because I was just watching it. Well, look, shall I lay the smackdown on some elements of this sitcom?
Yep.
Like, obviously, nothing bad about Stephanie Cole, who was sensation. But
Totes.
I can't say much, Steve-O, for the intro and the theme tune.
Oh, no.
Which is incredibly ordinary.
It's a bit lackluster.
It's fifth-rate Fawlty Towers music, and
it's a few still shots of a...
Yeah, crappy old building.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably a lovely old building, but you know what I'm saying? It's très ordinaire.
Yeah.
Oh, blimey.
I'm not disagreeing with you, that's for sure.
If someone says, "Oh, you've got to watch this. It's a laugh, right? Let's pop this on," and then that's the first minute of what you say. You just go, "No, thank you."
Well, yeah, and at that point, you've already got to get them past the fact that it's a sitcom about people in a retirement village.
Oh, well, that's true. So I do wonder if, now you've got me thinking, would this have been on concurrently with Victor Meldrew? One Foot in the Grave?
No, I'd have to look that up.
Because imagine that sort of night's viewing, right? You can settle in and you pop your feet up on the coffee table and you go, "Oh, lovely, I'm going to watch a bit of Victor and then I'm going to watch a bit of Diana and it's going to be ace." And then you know what I mean? That'd sort of...
Yeah, then you'd want to top yourself.
Oh, no, that's not true. That's not true.
Well, they're not glass half full people, are they?
No, they're not. All right, after you.
So we see this rift between our main characters because of the argument, and Daisy moving into that gap. We've talked about how she views Tom merely as a means to an end, which is getting her way, asserting her control over the daily life at the retirement village. So she's not in it for the romance at all, but this situation, seeing Tom with Daisy, does seem to stir up some feelings in Diana, even though she's not giving voice to those feelings.
Yeah.
So it moves their relationship on a bit, which is really good. And also, when the two main characters have been getting, where you've had a whole series, and then a couple of episodes, so their relationship's kind of stabilised. And
everyone knows what to expect.
Yes, everyone knows what to expect. So it's good to throw a wrench into those works every now and then, I think.
Yeah. So then she had, in a way, been taking him for granted, and now that there's other opportunities for him, she's like, "I better get a wriggle on."
Yeah, it's all
that.
Maybe
not that much, not that blatant, but there's an element of that in there.
Well, maybe she wasn't even thinking of sharing the rest of her life with someone until Tom had come out in a rather
blunt way,
blunt, mangled way, and said what he said. Yes, but I was thinking this situation where you've got two main characters who are quite tight in a friendship or something like that, where they have an argument and someone else comes in and starts causing jealousy between them. I feel sure that we've seen this a number of other times in other sitcoms. Not ones we've covered in Sitcom Showdown, but just as a general plot point or something like that. What about Richie and Eddie? Did they ever have an argument and one goes off? And
not that I can think of. No. Because Richie and Eddie don't get on particularly anyway.
No?
No.
So
I mean, when it's not them against the world, it's them against each other. No, look, so it may not be in a, like here we've got a male-female relationship. So then there might be other ones. Like, for example, at some stage, did Moss have a big fight, with... Oh, how can I forget his name? What's his face? The one who isn't Moss. And then he'd be friends with someone else for a little while.
Yeah, and I thought maybe Bernard and Manny or something like that could have had someone come in between them.
I think you're exactly right.
I'm sure it's happened somewhere.
It has happened with Bernard and Manny, because if you remember, they had that travel writer who Manny just thinks is the best dude in the whole world. And is this not ringing a bell?
It's not ringing a bell.
Oh, anyway, so there's this guy who writes these travel books, and he's going to do an in-store appearance. And Manny just idolises this guy. And Fran really obviously loves him as well because he's a super charming dude.
Yep.
And Bernard, being the sort of chappy he is,
he's not impressed.
He doesn't like super charming people. But then he
doesn't like anyone.
He ends up being totally charmed by him
really?
and all this sort of stuff. But he doesn't like that Manny worships somebody else, and he gets very upset.
Oh.
So there's very much an element of that there. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have seen it before. That's good. I'm glad it wasn't just my imagination.
Mm.
I also like, I think this is an interesting theme. You've got this group of elderly folk who were of an age that they must have lived through World War II.
Mm-hmm, totally.
So they got through World War II with these values of community spirit and joining together to
in the Blitz and all that.
get through the Blitz and all this sort of stuff. And they also value order, having an order to things and working together, as we've already said.
Yeah.
So Daisy is kind of appealing to that spirit within them when she's trying to get her way. It's interesting that Diana calls her a Nazi. She can see that she's really just using all that as a means to an end, which is to impose her
total control. Yeah,
over the retirement home.
Completely. This Daisy Williams lady will brook no disagreement, and she just steamrolls over people, and she just wants things done her way.
And strangely, she calls, in response to Diana not being pleased about all this stuff, she calls her a communist, a pinko, which seems to me totally wrong, because she's much more of a libertarian,
an individualist.
I don't necessarily want or need anyone else. I'm just quite happy staying in my own lane.
Yeah.
Doing my own thing, and
I don't want to be told what to do. That gets my back up, and in fact it's Daisy who's suggesting everyone should have exactly the same food, all sitting together, no special treatment for anyone unless it's me.
Yep, she even talks about communal living and all this sort of stuff. So yes, so if anyone's a communist, she seems
totally. But then, that's just how, if you were in the military, I imagine that you've got to be in barracks with other people, and that's shared quarters, and then the eating is shared, and then everything is shared. So it's probably not as much necessarily a communism thing as a military sort of thing.
Right.
All mucking in together.
Could be that too. Anything else before I move on to some thoughts about Stephanie?
Yeah. Okay, cool. I will. Well, we've talked about Basil and Tom. I thought
Basil.
It took me a while to get used to Tom, because I thought if he's this doddering and useless, he, like Stephanie Cole's the only one with half a brain, it seems, in the entire place. And I'm thinking that can't be an enjoyable sitcom to watch. But by the end of the episode, I'd come around that Tom is in fact switched on. It's just that he doesn't like to make a fuss. He's not going to be argumentative if he doesn't have to be. But he's not going to lie down and just take stuff all the time.
He's a cheerful sort of fellow.
I'm very much on Diana's side, and I'm very much against the new lady, Daisy Williams, who's a nasty, manipulative, authoritarian, nasty lady. And I'm glad they saw her off. Was she in that previous episode, Steve, where they had the argument?
I have watched it, but it's been a while since I have.
Oh, okay.
Since I did watch it.
Cool. All right, no problem. But yes, I think with Stephanie's acting, sometimes you can get confused between the character being a force of nature and the actor. Mm-hmm. And her character is very much a sort of dominant character, but I'd describe her performance as dominant. It's not the word I'm searching for, but she seems to be the best actor in there, and that's amongst some pretty good actors. But I think it just came down to she seemed more natural, whereas some of them seemed more stagey. And they seemed a bit slow. They seemed a step behind Stephanie Cole.
Yep. I think the guy who plays Harvey's probably not one of the best. Mm-hmm. He maybe could have done a better job.
Yeah.
Yes, she's definitely a leading light in this cast.
Oh, totally.
Although Tom's a very good character.
Yeah.
I think Graham does a good job of him.
I'm coming around to him. Yes. And that's all I've got to say, apart from a great line, is at the end when Tom and Diana are having their little chat and everything's wrapping up quite nicely. And I can't remember what caused him to say it, but he goes, yes, but you're not a normal human being.
Yeah.
And I just sort of went, I like that line. And she took it quite well. I think she realises full well she's not a normal human being.
Yes, and that was in response to her saying that she thought that Tom had been romantically interested in Daisy, and he just says, oh no, I think I just kind of got swept up in the...
Carried along in her way.
The movement of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he didn't think it through until Basil sat him down with a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Caught him a wally. Yes, I thought she did a great job of balancing the feistiness of the character, which has already been established, with holding back in this situation, to give Tom a chance to come around. Even though she obviously, she was hopeful that he would. but she wasn't imposing her will on him.
So would you describe this as an atypical episode in a way?
It's not the typical episode. No.
All right.
Because normally it's them
bickering.
Typically, there's always, that's part of the fun is that they're quite well drawn, big characters.
Yeah. And
they rub up against each other in an interesting way, but often it's them with that mix fighting against something, some situation, like fighting with each other instead of against each other. Yes. I also want to mention her in Keeping Mum, which is kind of a completely opposite character to Diana.
Yeah.
Because she's very much the ditzy mum who needs to be taken care of. But in that case, she does a really good job of, and we've seen it in the Australian version as well, with Ruth Cracknell, where you're never entirely sure whether the character is completely dotty and has lost the plot, or whether they're just being crafty.
Yeah. That's superbly put. That's right. And there's always that element of doubt.
Yep, she does it really well.
I'd only seen her as the nasty characters, and that's why it was so good to see Keeping Mum, in that she was just a genuinely nice lady, except for the times she's a little bit manipulative and that sort of thing. But yeah, completely different characters. So that gave me a true idea of Stephanie Cole's range. I'd always thought that she was just extremely good at playing horrible.
Yeah. Would you say there's a lot of similarities between Diana and the Widow
Featherstone? No, I wouldn't, because I think the Widow Featherstone's got a bit more of the Daisy about her, in that she's very prim and proper, and things have got to be done a certain way, and it's all about appearances and all that sort of stuff. Whereas
so she's
Diana's
more regimented than...
Well, see, Diana doesn't care what anybody thinks, but Mrs. Featherstone cares very much what people think. That's my surface level reading of the whole thing.
That's why she's still wearing black after.
Well, that's right.
However many years.
Yes.
Interesting.
She's very much a keeping up appearances sort of lady, the Widow Featherstone. Although, and this is part of why Still Open All Hours is so frustratingly frustrating.
Yes.
Is that suddenly, the Black Widow's become a drunken, sex-crazed, you know what I mean? It's just completely... She's doing things in Still Open All Hours that she would never, ever have done in Open All Hours. But, if you've got Stephanie Cole, why not give her some of these moments to completely blow people's minds?
Yeah.
I'm sure she's loving playing the Black Widow these days.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's much more there to play with.
You betcha. And, of course, without, there's no Nurse What's-Her-Name to...
Yeah, no, Nurse Gladys.
Draw the spotlight. So Stephanie Cole's got free reign to completely do her thing.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, well, let's draw this to a close.
Right.
And next month, what are we doing? We're just doing a...
Okay. Well, because
it's a long way away.
We've had a few timing problems.
A few little hiccups.
And so that might have blown our extremely tight and regimented schedule out of the water. So I'm not sure if this month or next month is supposed to be a special...
I think it was just a...
Standard
episode next month.
All right, so...
And then, of course, in November... No, October. It'll be a Halloween episode. There are plans afoot to switch from fortnightly to monthly. Yeah. So we haven't mentioned this on the Facebook page or anything like that, or publicly announced. We'll break it here first.
Yeah. So yes, it's back to normal for the next episode of Sitcom Showdown, which will be episode number 78. And of course, we are not telling you what that sitcom is going to be.
No, of course not.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to tune in. All right. Thanks, Jeff.
No worries. Thank you. It's good to have Stephanie in the hall.
Yes. It was good. Cool bananas.
All right. See you next time.
See ya.
Join us next time on Sitcom Showdown, when we'll be putting another 5-star episode under the microscope. And in the meantime, you can contact us with feedback on Facebook, Twitter @Sitcom Showdown, or by email sitcomshowdown@gmail.com.